Now I'm going to show you a neat trick that is one of those old school tricks that we learn. That's one of those little things you don't see in the books all the time. So this is how to, there's some times where, whether you're on a wide web press or a narrow web press, where you just like to split that roll in half when it comes to the rewinder. And if we could do that sometimes without having to send it to a rewinder or a slitting machine, it saves us a lot of time. And there are jobs that lend themselves to that, okay? And maybe you have to slit something on a press for another job or something like that. So let's look at what happens as the roll comes off, the last roll, before it heads to the rewinder, okay? Now, here is a idler roller, right? And then over here is a roll that it's winding onto, okay? And that web comes down off of this, and it starts to rewind onto this roll, okay? So this here is an idler, and this here is your core, or the rewind shaft. Okay? Now, what we're talking about is the last idler before it gets rewound. We want to now slit this down the middle and end up with two rolls. But one of the problems that happens is when we try slitting it here and wrapping it around this roll like here, you get the risk of overlapping the two webs as they're getting rewound here and building up in the center, and also locking those two rolls together so you can't get them out. So how can you trick that, or what trick can you use to make sure that these two webs that are winding up on the slitter are a little bit apart so that they don't overlap? Okay, well, let's first talk about something, one of the principles about handling webs. Okay, let's look at a web guide, and the principle that web guide uses to guide web, okay? Now, let's take that same roll, and let's say that this roll can go up and down this way, and over here too, up or down, okay? So this roll can teeter-totter this way and this way, okay? Either like that or like that. And you'll see, and that is true whether the orientation is vertical or whether it's horizontal like this. Now, if I were to bring this side up, right, the web wants to move towards that higher side, okay? If I bring this side down and this side up, the web is going to want to come over this way, okay? So you can say in short that the web wants to ride to the high side, and the high side is relative to the orientation of the film. It's the side of the roll that's further away in the web path, okay? So now, by knowing that, we can use that to our advantage, okay? So now, back to where we're just considering that roll again, okay? And now here's our rewind shaft again. And now we're going to have a core here, and then another core right next to it, okay? With a little separation, or you could have those two cores together depending on how you want the wind to come. And now we have the web. It's coming around this thing, down around this roll. And don't worry about my drawing. I know it's not perfect, but you get the idea. Okay, so now it comes like this, right? So now we want to slit at this point. Let's say that this is our slitter wheel. That's just an image of our slitter. Slitter, okay? Or that could be a blade, razor. Any way to cut that web right around that point. It could be a little bit beyond that point, okay? Now, to get these things to separate and take advantage of the fact that the web wants to go to that high side or that further side, take a little bit of about a 1/2 inch wide or so masking tape or scotch tape or something like that and wrap it right around here. 1 to 2 wraps. Something like that. Play around with it. And the same thing right here. On either side of where it's being slit, okay? And now what's going to happen is that this side of the web is going to want to move that way because you've artificially created a high side with this tape right here around your roller. This part of the web wants to go that way because you've artificially created a high side on the roll here. The webs separate, and you'll watch as it comes off that roll, it separates, and then it increasingly separates, and right about that point, you could get a 1/8 to a 1/4 inch gap or more. Keeping those two separated. Now, if you play with the tension, you'll find that the greater the tension here, the more they go out, the less the tension they go in. So you're going to be doing a balance. You're going to be having the right amount of tape there, and you're going to monitor the tension and see how it acts with the tension. If you notice that at the tension that you need to keep things normal, you're not getting enough separation, then you want to increase the amount of tape maybe that you have on either side of that roll. But play around with it. Make sure that your tension is driven by how much tension is required, not how it does that. And you'll find you're going to be able to, in a pinch, do a lot of this where you're using a press and you're slitting, taking 2 rolls off that machine instead of having to send it downstream. So I hope you found that useful. That's something that I learned from somebody old school, and it's one of those things that you just don't learn all the time just by reading and something. Somebody needs to teach you that, and that's what this whole global apprenticeship is about. So thanks for your time. I hope to bring you more soon.